Hay otra versión de este documental que tiene los subtítulos un poquito más grandes, pero es que la calidad baja. Este tiene buena calidad, entonces yo creo que nos va a funcionar, people. ¿Qué más, mi Pau? ¿Cómo estás? Creo que no te había saludado. ¿Qué más? ¿Ya estás nerviosa? No, no, no te pongas nerviosa. No pasa nada, no pasa nada. No mentiras, póngase súper nerviosa. Puede ser, ponemos un... Es un azulaco así, todo fuerte son.
Okay, set.
So how did this start, Jeff?
Probably about 10 years ago. I was my girlfriend at the time and I we were talking about just different paranormal stories, and she started telling me about how sometimes she would wake up in the middle of the night, just like unable to move or
Voy a tratar
breathe.
de no interrumpir mucho. Solamente paro y meto la cucharada, la cago. Pues para no joderle la
She
vaina.
said it felt like there's like an evil presence in the room with her, and that it would just like kind of like torment her, and then she would eventually wake up and it'd be like it was just a dream. And after she told me that, I didn't really know what to make of it. I was like, okay, I got involved with some crazy girl, and I just kind of changed the subject, started talking about something else. Then about a week later, I laid down to go to sleep, and just as I started to drift off, I felt my body just become extremely heavy. And it was like I fell asleep, but then woke up at like the same
Eso es lo que
time,
estamos hablando, ¿no?
and just my whole body started tingling. Felt like really weighted down, like something was pulling me. And I heard this like sound. It wasn't like outside of my head, but it was just like inside of my head. It just sounded like a wash machine, just kind of like out of balance or something, just like banging against the wall, and just really terrified me.
Mm.
Kind of started like freaking out and like started seeing things, and it's really bizarre.
What did you see?
It's kind of like it's kind of like all these different colors, like a laser light show or something, or like I was like flying through like a time warp. It just had all these like colors just like shooting at me and lights and stuff. And I had found that I had zero control over my body. Like no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move my arms, my legs, or nothing. And so I started to kind of have like a panic attack because I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was dead. I thought it was like a stroke or something. Nothing worked. I couldn't move. I had no control over anything. And finally, I decided, well, I'm just gonna try to build up all the strength that I have in me just to get myself to roll over onto my girlfriend, hoping that it wakes her up. So it's just like this last ditch effort of everything I had. I just like wrenched my body. As soon as I like flipped over on top of her, I woke up. And I was still laying in my original position, like none of it had happened. It was just completely shocked. I had no idea what was going on. I just did not know what to make of it. After that, it was like constantly, night after night after night for a couple weeks, maybe even a month or so. Just did not know how to process it at the time. So finally, I told my girlfriend about it. I was like, okay, this is what's happening to me. I think I need to go to the doctor. I think I'm having strokes, like mini strokes or seizures maybe even. And she's like, no, that's exactly what happens to me. And it's like, that's what I was trying to tell you about.
I was about 29 years old. And here in this room, as I would lay down to sleep, I'd start feeling tingling in my feet, and then I would feel it rise up my legs, up my torso, and my hands. And I'd also hear buzzing, like bees buzzing. That's when these episodes would start. I would feel tingling, and I would get numb. I feel the energy. I felt that my mind was awake, but my body was stiff. I'd try to move my head from side to side. I couldn't move.
Las personas que vamos a escuchar ahorita con los testimonios son personas que ya tienen como un grado un poquito ya, ¿no? Hasta crónico, ya un grado un poquito más heavy. Em, lo que dicen ellos es cierto, el nivel de impotencia, el nivel de inseguridad que se siente, es que yo creo que no hay nada peor que eso. Voy a contar una mía muy rápida, yo en algún momento, como para seguir, yo en algún momento, eso fue hace muchos años, eso fue como en una rumba que tuve, bueno, rumba, llegué a la casa, pim pum pam, no llegué alcoholizado, pero sí estaba con un amigo, que mi amigo sí estaba en un estado muy lamentable. Y el man ese día consumió drogas. Estamos en la casa de él y me dio la huevonada esta, men. Me dio la vaina de la parálisis del sueño del no sentir, entonces yo lo llamaba a él, yo decía, pues el man no creo que esté por estos lados ni que vaya a estar. Ricardo, yo decía, y trataba de hablar y trataba de hablar, pero mi imbécil amigo en ese entonces estaba muy intoxicado y me generaba la impotencia y empecé a llorar, ¿no? Pero el no poder hacer nada, absolutamente nada, ¿no? Es muy frustrante, hermano, es muy frustrante.
And in that moment, I would hear tapping on the window.
Y sin saber cuánto
And it would
tiempo
tap.
uno se la pase en esas, ¿no?
I would hear
Porque uno
tapping.
no tiene el
And I'm
control del
thinking, well,
tiempo.
maybe it's just a squirrel or a raccoon. But it was like a pattern. It was definitely a knock. And I would open my eyes and I'd look toward the window and then it would stop. But after a while, I started feeling an actual presence.
Zonas, cabrón.
And I would feel this presence right next to me trying to take my soul out. It would torture me at night and I would try and fight it. But I felt my body felt paralyzed. It was just so strong that I would just let go. And then I'd feel myself floating in the air and I could try and see myself, but I would just see a blur. And it happened for many years. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I felt the baby as well trying to come out, but I was trying to fight it, and I was saying no, no. So I would pull back. It's like if I would pull back, and it would pull, the other way.
When I was in my mid to late 20s, I had a really awful breakup. I was miserable because I was like so brokenhearted, and I started my first teaching job around the same time, so I was super stressed out from that. I would just see this like dark figure by the bookshelves,
Esa la-
and I like could not move. And I was fucking
Interrumpo más
terrified.
adelante. Interrumpo
I
más
don't know what's
adelante.
happening. I did think that somebody had broken into my apartment at first because at that point my roommate and I lived at a roommate then. Like we lived on 4th Street and we were on the top floor of the building. And our building was really easy to get into. Like the door in from the balcony to like our apartment didn't really lock, and so I think I was like, oh fuck, somebody actually broke in. To be lying there and like, no, I want to move and I'm trying to move and I cannot. Absolutely terrifying.
I've always had a problem with states of consciousness, slipping in and out of different states of consciousness. And I do remember when I was very, very young, 2, 3, I was still in a crib. And there was a plug-in nightlight, and it was that orange cast color. And it was all dark except for that orange cast. And the room turned red, and I felt like something was coming after me, and I cuddled down and covered myself. It was my earliest memory of the scariness that happened to me and continued to happen. Laying down to go to sleep, I would feel utterly exhausted, almost as if I had just been drugged.
¿No será una pesadilla?
I mean, you know,
Pues mi Cami, yo pensé eso, ¿sabes? Yo pensé eso y yo dije, bueno, más el alcohol. Esa fue la primera vez que me dio, más el alcohol, mal parche, no la pasé bien. Yo pensé que eso era mi Cami. Yo pensé, esto es una pesadilla. Voy a lo que yo viví. Estas personas creo que ya están en un nivel más Saiyajin, pero yo pensé eso. Yo dije, no, esto será una pesadilla. Bueno, esto no le pasa nada, esto es una huevonada que no podía levantarme. Eso seguramente era un imaginario, ¿no? Pero después me volvió a pasar y me pasó ya en mi casa, estando tranquilo. Después hablé con una amiga que es psicóloga. Ella me dijo, bueno, ¿tú qué estabas haciendo antes? Yo dije, bueno, estaba trabajando al frente del computador, estaba sacando unos trabajos, todo el día estuve al frente del computador. Entonces ella me dijo y me trató de decir que realmente fue una cuestión de fotosensibilidad, que estar al frente del computador me generaba un tipo de reacción del cual podía ver luces y tenía un muy fuerte estímulo el cual podría llegar a esa situación, pero era un estímulo que podría el estímulo desarrollarse en una pesadilla o en un sueño. Entonces yo dije, ve, ok, sin todavía saber que era la parálisis del sueño. Pero ese día me volví a hacer también. Ella me dijo que la cuestión esta de dormir boca arriba no era muy recomendable. Entonces también pensé, bueno, si es que estoy sufriendo de la apnea del sueño, qué huevonadas. Y en otra situación me pasó y no estando dormido boca arriba, ¿no? Desde que me dijeron que no durmiera boca arriba, yo ya no duermo boca arriba, pero ahora duermo de medio ladito. Y me dio también la cuestión del rabillo de ojo, que sientes, sientes y sientes y sientes pues, la gritería, que tú quieres levantarte, hacer algo al respecto, no puedes, sientes impotencia, sientes inseguridad. Lo peor es sentirse inseguro de que realmente pueda llegar a pasar algo y tú no poder hacer nada. Entonces esa vaina me pasó como por tercera vez y yo ya lo empecé a hablar con amigos donde ellos me decían, marica, yo también he pasado por la misma situación. ¿Cómo se llama? La parálisis del sueño. Y ahí comencé a darle un contexto a la situación. Entonces, sigamos viendo y lo vamos charlando, si les parece.
haven't been in the hospital. I understand what that's like. It's just like I had been injected. And my eyes sealed shut, my mouth sealed shut, and it's as if everything was shutting down except for my awareness, my consciousness. And then I could feel a vibration. Sometimes it was so intense it felt like being electrocuted, but it was definitely an electrical vibration. I began hearing voices and screams and crying and all of this really emotional drama, yelling to crying, but all negative emotion, all of these different voices. And then that is when the shadow man would come toward me.
Oh,
And
zonas.
he looked just like a three-dimensional shadow, outline, just perfect.
Paréntesis chiquito, paréntesis chiquito. Las personas, a mí nunca me... Bueno, yo a veces sentía que pasaban sombras, pero era como... Sentía que pasara sombras, pero muchas personas, bueno, muchas, esto es una exageración, con las personas que hablé con respecto a esto, me decían que sí veían gente pasando, por eso le daba a uno tanta impotencia, porque pues uno quieto en su cama, pues uy, qué gonorrea, la única impotencia que sientes es que no se puede mover, pero la sensación de inseguridad te la daba porque tú sentías que había muchas sombras y que había gente rondando, y la gente con la que yo hablaba de esto me decía, marica, yo sentí que alguien se me acercó en algún momento y fue puta, y qué miedo, y que fue pucha, que se me quedó mirando, pero no hubo contacto físico,
and he would walk.
no hubo vulneración del rabo. Ay, gonorrea.
And he brought the vibration with him. It's as if it was emanating from him. And he would come towards me, and I would just feel that. I would hear all the sounds of hell. I don't know any other way to put it. And feel his awful vibration. And I would have a fight-flight response. And I would completely, freak out and try to scream or get away.
Ay, gonorrea.
And many times the intensity just continued. And I was very scared. And I was upstairs, and I didn't feel like anybody was going to get to me if I screamed. It's very dark. And it scared me forever. I mean, it really scared me to the end of my wits. And if anything was going to drive me insane, it was going to be that.
What happens is when you're falling asleep, that you'll get an electrical shock through your body just as you're falling asleep, and that's the usual indication that you're gonna have a visit that night. Then you'll fall asleep, and then you'll wake up and you're totally paralysed. You can't move, and there's static in the room, and you're being visited. They'll circle your bed, and now and again they'll try and touch you. The first one is the generic shadow person, which is just basically an outline of me and you on a sunny day on the side, on the pavement.
Voy a ser putamente honesto, people. Yo sí vi sombras. Yo sí vi sombras. No puedo decir si fue mujer, hombre, la llorona, la patasola, pero yo sí en esos momentos sí vi sombras.
Sidewalk in a 3D form.
Es que es gonorrea, es que impresiona, porque es que lo emulan muy bien, me hago entender. La parte de producción la hace muy bien, porque realmente la imagen como tal. Ya me detengo, lo paro y los vuelvo locos.
He's a very authoritarian figure. He's very menacing. He's in charge of them. His minions, so to speak, and their team is hell. He's awful. But it all starts with that electrical shock.
I have my two separate lives. I have my life, like, we're here talking about it, and it's, you know, it's cool, and I go to work. And then when I go to bed, I have this whole other life that I have to deal with. When it first started, it was pretty intermittent. It wasn't every day. Don't know the age, around this time. My brother didn't live with us anymore, and I had my room to myself. And it's kind of funny because I can remember my bed had collapsed onto a box of Beanie Babies that my mom collected. My mom was a big collector. And so my bed kind of pivots, right? On top of this thing, there's a frame and the bed pivoting. And I remember the bed was pivoted in this particular night with my feet closer to the ground and my head higher up, like a seesaw. And I remember the paralysis starts, and I can see the door frame. Like, I can see, like, I'm looking directly at, you know, I'm looking at a wall and the door is right here. So here's a bed, there's me, bam. Straight forward, there's a door that exits, right? And there's the light from the hallway. And I remember seeing, you know, your traditional darkness, you know, everything kind of exists in shadows. I mean, it all looks like it's moving. All the darkness looks alive.
Ah, qué porquería, men. Yo no vi al sombrerero, pero
But I remember seeing people, beings, whatever, just coming in. They looked like if a person were to walk in front of a light and their shadow were to follow them, they looked like an almost more shadow-like version of a shadow, like, and kind of just didn't do anything. Like I remember now that they just shadows moving in, like they would kind of intersect the light. I remember this kind of well now because I was on this weird tilt. So it wasn't just me looking up or like being able to kind of see around. This is me looking straight at the door and just seeing these things. I remember in the process, I thought that they were real. And I always think they're real. Even to this day, I think these things are real in some sense. But when I woke up, they weren't there. It was definitely the first time.
Un paréntesis. Ustedes no han escuchado mucho historias con respecto a que a personas se les mueren familiares, que se les muere un abuelito, se les muere la abuelita, los papás hasta ese caso, se les muere alguien muy cercano. ¿No han escuchado esas historias? Y que la persona está durmiendo y siente la calidez del supuesto difunto, o que abre los ojos y siente eso. Eso sería la parálisis del sueño. Lo que pasa es que la gente le pone un poquito más de fantasía y hablan respecto a eso, pero sería esa la parálisis del sueño también, si uno lo analiza. Porque yo sí he escuchado muchas historias, y yo creo que ustedes también, de que, uy, marica, yo estaba durmiendo y comencé a sentir la energía, y yo sabía que era mi abuelita, yo sabía que era mi abuelito, yo sabía que era mi tío, yo sabía que era yo sabía y no podía levantarme, abría los ojos y yo lo veía, el que me estaba sentado en la orilla de la cama, ¿no? Esa sería parálisis del sueño.
That I saw something.
Apartando lo otro, ¿no?
That made me
Apartando
think this
qué pena, otro paréntesis. Apartando la parte de la cercanía que tú pudieses llegar a tener y que se hace una cuestión de energías. Estoy apartando eso. Si no, yo estoy hablando es del sentir, de la energía de que está algo pasando y que no tienes la locomoción de la situación. ¿Me hago entender? ¿Sí? De la unión del familiar la estoy separando, pero pues digo que de ahí sale también muchas historias relacionadas a que el familiar, de que y que estoy durmiendo y que algo está pasando.
more than just a sleep disorder.
California. Ay, me recuerda a Uzi. Qué pena.
I do remember it happening as far back as when I was a little girl. As far back as maybe 5 or 6 years old. And then the same thing happened when I was about 15.
Uy, endemoniado el cuarto, papá.
During that time, I was a rebellious teenager. So I was
Uy, no,
really
ya
out of
muy
control and feeling like unloved and stuff. I don't know how I got that way. But it was kind of like a brokenness inside. Like I was just broken, spiritually broken. And that time I was in a 2-story home in Torrance, the city of Torrance.
El primer testimonio de una persona que
It was in
está
the middle of the night, but
dormida.
I was wide awake. Like I was literally wide awake. My eyes were open.
No boca arriba,
but
sino.
I could now feel this presence, this evil presence behind me.
Es que yo no podría decir que son presencias malignas.
Lying on my side, like on my
Ella lo
left
dice,
side.
seguramente fue su
I'm
experiencia,
a
pero
side sleeper.
no sé, men.
And then the door is behind me. And
Ay,
and
no,
then
gonorrea.
I could feel the presence just right behind me. And I remember just wanting to move and turn around, but I could not lift a finger. Again, I was just frozen. Utterly in terror. And it was if I could describe what death would feel like.
Eso es lo que le decía a ustedes con respecto a
And it's
lo.
a kind of horror that is worse than like in the movies. It's an icy cold kind of
Con respecto a sentir a alguien muy
dark,
cercano,
evil,
pero no.
something's in the room.
Es que no se puede mover uno,
Watching me,
marica.
that's
Que es
the
que es
scary
una
part,
mierda,
that
weón.
you feel a sense that it's watching you. And it's making you feel afraid. And it wants you to feel afraid.
Ugh.
I was a 1.5 old probably, and I was born and raised in rural Vermont, in an old farmhouse, about 100 plus years old, and I was in the middle of the woods. So it was very dark and very quiet, just pitch silence, which, you know, itself kind of has a sound. So here I am, I'm a baby. I wake up and I can't move. I'm in my crib, and you know, so I'm surrounded by the bars of the crib on all sides.
Estamos
And
vivos, ¿cierto? Todos
above
están
me,
vivos.
at the end of the crib, before the window, are two anthropomorphic kind of beings, I guess. Best word to describe them. I still remember them vividly, because it's actually my first memory. So in a way, it's kind of my awakening into the
Lo
world.
siento. Sí, están vivos todos.
They always just look so cartoony. I've tried to draw them before, and it just looks like so goofy. It just doesn't have the same malevolent impact. And their skin.
Coges ese lápiz de una forma rara,
was,
man. ¿Lo vas a romper o qué? Lo siento, es que estoy un poquito nervioso.
You know, it had, you know, like an old TV, when the signals, when you're not getting a good signal, it had that same kind of texture, that kind of.
Estática. Sí, pero asustados. No, Fer, vamos para adelante, mi Fer, no pasa nada, no pasa nada. Nada de miedo, nada de miedo.
Fingers, and they had these very simple faces, almost cartoonish faces of, you know, these two inky eyes and this big, like, inky smile on their face. This kind of, you know, tickling fingers. These like long, slender. They were laughing, you know, and then here's my little feet, you know. They were tickling me. Couldn't, you know, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move and I couldn't stop them. And they were laughing about it. There was kind of like laughter, like ha ha ha, like there, you know. And bars, these two anthropomorphic things, the windows. You know, according to my parents, but I kept on repeating the word Zines, like Zines, over and over again in like kind of a panic. Kind of like, Zines, you know, like hanging on to them. And so maybe as a child, you know, seeing these kind of anthropomorphic, sort of not human, but human, so I wouldn't sleep in my crib again.
No, venga acá a asustarnos
My
de esa
parents
forma, hijo de puta.
tried to put me in my crib, and I just wouldn't do it. I was just screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. I made this as a Halloween costume some years ago. Now you're staring into my childhood right now. I don't know, is it scary?
Did you seek any medical help?
No, because I didn't think I was going crazy. I knew what I was experiencing was real. And I didn't.
Qué pena, pero yo cuando le comenté a mi amiga, la que les dije que es psicóloga, ella me dijo, pero ¿tú qué? ¿Tú qué? ¿Estás consumiendo algo? ¿Estás consumiendo qué? ¿O qué? ¿Estás de químico ahora? Sí, ella me dijo, ya no creyó mucho la vaina, pero después cuando me vio... Mi people, ¿me espera un segundito? Espera un segundito, por favor, y voy al baño por más y voy por más cafecito de una vez. Listo, mi people. Sigamos. Sigamos. Pero en serio, ¿ninguno de ustedes le ha pasado eso? ¿Somos muy weird? Sí. No.
I want someone else to come and tell me, well, no, that's not real.
Did you seek
Sigamos, a
any
ver.
kind of help? Did you try to do anything to keep it from happening?
Did I get an exorcist? No, I did a Google search.
I got on the internet very early compared to most people in about 94 maybe, I'm totally guessing, 94, 95. And one of the very first things I looked up was the Shadow Man and Nightmare. And from there in the search engines, it wasn't very far down the page, sleep paralysis. I was like, wait, sleep? Frozen sleep paralysis. And I called my mom up right away. I said, oh my gosh, Mom, it's sleep paralysis. That's what they call it. It's a thing. She was very excited too, and she wanted to understand more about it because she felt that maybe something medical could be done so that we no longer had it. Because when the scientists figure it out, they figure out a medicine to go with it, right? So we felt
Sí, señora.
that we would actually have answers and
Ilústranos.
medication or something to make it better.
I called the doctor and made an appointment and came in and explained to them what was going on, and my doctor said that she was kind of concerned that maybe I was having seizures while I was sleeping, and so she set me up for like a CAT scan, EEG, and all that. So I went in for those, and my results for the CAT scan were normal, but the EEG came back with, said I had abnormal results. That's all she said. You have some abnormal readings. You have sleep paralysis. It's just caused by stress. So if you just make some lifestyle changes, it'll go away.
But you get a cut and paste answer from doctors. You're stressed, change your lifestyle without asking what your lifestyle is. There's no answer, it's just a dismissal.
Lo del estrés sí lo escuché en algún momento, ¿saben? Lo del estrés sí lo escuché en reiteradas ocasiones cuando lo hablaba con mis amigos y decía, pero marica, será porque estamos estresados de la universidad, mamados de la universidad, de lo que estamos. Y sí tendría mucho que ver.
Basically, they don't know, and if they don't know, then they don't care.
Every time I would talk to like a psychiatrist, I'd be like, I'm having this sleep problem. Like, this is what happens. This is what it feels like. They'd be like, okay. Tell me about like, how you doing at home. And I would always try to be like, no. Let's talk about this hideous sleep problem I have. She seemed really interested. She just like leans in and she's like, and it's not sleep apnea. And I was like, I know that. And she just said, that's really messed up.
¿Qué más, monito? ¿Cómo vas? Espero que estés muy bien, papi, que estés teniendo una excelente noche. Allá son las 7. ¿No? Sí, ¿cierto? Ay, no, las 9. Las 7 son las...
I remember the
Dios mío.
following night after it would happen, I'd lay in bed being so scared that it was going to happen again, and then most assuredly it would happen again because I was thinking about it and obsessing about it.
Like when I'd go through like the dry spells basically where I wasn't having it, if I started telling somebody about it, then it was like almost 100% guarantee that I was gonna have it that night.
This is in our college apartment.
Okay.
So I was here. I had my bed right here. And then my roommate
Qué pena, people.
was right here. And the blobs, I saw these black blobs. I could see them.
Monito, 3 horas son las 9, ¿no? Las 9 de la noche serían en Argentina. Entonces, monito, alístate. Porque hoy te vas a pegar un sustaco, amigo. No vas a dormir hoy normal. No, mentiras. Mentira. Estamos en pleno documental, amigos, sobre la parálisis del sueño. El documental que les había dicho hace tiempito.
And she's sleeping away, and I'm straining to talk, and nothing can come out.
Algo parecido es la primera historia que les comenté que a mí me pasó cuando estaba mi amigo drogado y yo estaba al otro lado tratando de que alguien me dijera algo. Yo no estaba viendo presencias, de pronto sí sombras. Estoy llegando a la suposición porque yo no tenía los ojos y no recuerdo porque si se dan cuenta estas personas todas tienen los ojos así. No están así, pues yo nunca estoy así, sino como, sí, como... Entonces, de tener los ojos así también se generan muchas situaciones con respecto a la oscuridad, a la luz, a la pata sola. Y uno con ganas de gritar, weón.
And I've experienced, well, been close to death quite a few times. I'm a deep diver, but nothing's as terrifying as what happens, and I have it once or twice a week.
When I was about 10 is when it started to happen.
Te lo devoras con mayonesa y ketchup.
You know,
Te lo devoras, bonito.
petrified little boy, you know, terrified to be alone, hated my bedroom, hated the room below my bedroom. and
Llegaste a
had
tiempo, bonito,
sleep
llegaste a tiempo,
paralysis
amigo.
Probably every night. You know, had voices talking to me in the sleep paralysis, very abusive experiences. Hey, Forrest. You just won Giant Insect of the Month Club.
Gonorrea.
The Month Club. We're sending your first prize up to your bedroom right now.
Hueputa.
Again, goes back to the
Casi
fact
brinco.
that, you know, because it wasn't like a real experience. If somebody had come into my bedroom and some creepy guy was whispering to me every night, you know, my parents would definitely have done something about it. But the farthest they went was kind of being like, well, maybe we should take him to a psychologist. No.
I was trying to fall asleep. I felt this like overwhelming pressure come over me.
Eso es bonito. Que tratas de gritar, tratas de moverte, tratas de expresarte, pues para que alguien vaya a socorrer la situación tan complicada, que alguien se acerque a vos, pero tú no puedes porque no sé si estás en el sueño o estás bajo, no sé si un trance, es que parece como si uno estuviese bajo un trance, hermano, ¿sabes? Como si uno estuviese en un trance total, ¿no? En Burundangao.
And my
Es
breathing
muy
just
raro.
stopped.
Es muy raro.
My body was trying to kind of tell me, I'm gonna kill
Qué
myself.
pena. People, nos devolvemos un poquito. Es que no sé el contexto. Ok, qué pena con ustedes. Qué pena.
My body was trying to kind of tell me, I'm gonna kill myself now, and you have the option to stop that. If I want to continue to breathe, I have to actively override whatever else is going on. I have two options: either try to break free of the paralysis, or I breathe.
You know, that was kind of the beginning, and that was the beginning of me being afraid of not going to sleep, but you know, I would just pressure myself to wait till exhaustion to fall asleep for the most part, because after that it just never stopped, kind of ever.
You know, I'll get it just about anywhere. Some places will be much worse. And the voice is different by place. I had an apartment in Boston. I lived in Jamaica Plain in Boston for a while above a pizza place. And I would always hear this middle-aged woman singing in a baby's voice there. Like, la, 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 la,
Correcto, monito.
And just
Así sería.
gradually faded away until I pretty much almost forgot I had ever experienced.
Les puedo botar un dato así recién sacado de la manga. Ustedes han sentido que cuando ustedes están durmiendo en un sueño muy profundo, uy, se despiertan por algo, que siente que se caen porque uno va a un vacío. ¿Ustedes saben por qué es eso? Según lo que he escuchado, eso es porque tu presión cardíaca baja a unos niveles demasiado peligrosos y es tu cuerpo el que te está avisando, marica, ojo, despiértese, reactívese, uno puede llegar a un sueño, pero tan profundo que tu presión cardíaca llega a unos niveles demasiado peligrosos que tocan el límite completo. Entonces, donde tu cuerpo te está avisando, oiga, papi, a despertarse, a reactivarse. Un detalle de fina coquetería.
And I thought I was good, finally over. It's just a phase I was going through, and now it's done. One afternoon, I was up doing housework and was kind of tired, and I figured I'll lay down and take a nap because I'm going to go out with friends later on tonight. So I went, laid down, and set the alarm on my phone, checked all the time, and just like kind of threw it on the nightstand next to me. And just laid down, and as I started to fall asleep, I felt like this tingling sensation come over me. And since I had been dealing with it so long, it was kind of like a familiar feeling. It's like the warning sign, okay, sleep paralysis is about to happen. I would get like, my body would tingle, start to feel heavy. I'd see just like all these pixelated colors. And so I sat myself up to wake myself up, kind of shake it off. And so then it felt like it went away. And so I just like, picked up my phone, looked at the time, okay. Laid back down and started going to sleep. And just as I fell asleep, my phone rang. And so I laid there for a second. It was like, do I answer it? Don't I answer it? Just fell asleep, and now somebody's waking me up. So finally I gave in and I answered it. I grabbed my phone, hello. When I did that, the person on the other end of the line said, hello, and then they said something else that I couldn't really make out, so it was all staticky and cutting out. And so I said, I can't understand you, you're breaking up, there's a bad connection. And I said, hello again, and it's like, you're breaking up, I can't, hear you. And so finally I trying to make out what they were saying and whatnot, and I decided, I'm up, I'm gonna go get a cigarette, so I got up, talking to him like, hello, hello, and then finally, I walked out into the living room, and just as I got out in the living room, the connection cleared up, and the person on the other end was just like this very pleasant man, and he was like, hello, I was wondering if you could do me a favor.
What kind of favor?
Ay, gonorrea.
Freaked out, I was like, there's a demon
Hueputa.
on my phone.
Casi no. No. Puta, es una falta de respeto.
Through my phone.
Sí, es como
un room, and it broke in pieces, and then everything around me just like went into complete chaos. Just like almost like an earthquake hit. It's like everything was shaking.
Uno se puede morir, qué pena lo paro, uno se puede morir durmiendo, pues eso se cree, mi Fer, que cuando realmente, bueno, sería bueno que a uno le midieran la presión arterial a ver cómo está en esos momentos, pero que sí baja mucho y realmente es un punto de advertencia de tu propio cuerpo que te está diciendo, reacciona porque te vas a morir. Es fuerte, pero pues no, hay gente que llega a unos niveles de sueño profundos, pero si uno puede morir en cualquier instancia en un ataque al corazón y uno queda ahí chao chao, ¿no? Pero pues sí, en esos casos pues es la forma del cuerpo. No, pero a mí me pasó que como que me ahogaba, que me asfixiaban, uy, bonito. Bueno, eso puede ser también mucho como lo que se ha explicado en el documental. Pero ¿sentiste alguna presencia cuando estabas pasando por eso, monito? ¿Sentiste?
Just like trying to process this, like what's going on, I'm just absolutely terrified. And so the only thing I could think to do is I just started praying, I was like, God, if you're there, help me, I don't know what's happening. Just please, somebody help me.
Eso lo hablamos ahorita, monito, porque es que no quiero
down the hall and just like slam me back into my body, and like I hit my body and like sat up instantly and like looked around and was like, did that just happen? What was that real? And so the first thing I did was grab my phone, you know, I'm like looking through, okay, who did I just talk to? And like, no, there was no missed calls or no answered calls or nothing. And I had looked at the time and it had only been like 2 minutes since I had initially laid down to go to sleep. I did tell my mom, and she just kind of told me I'm nuts.
Estoy que me hablo, pero no puedo, no les quiero molestar.
No, mom, it wasn't a dream.
Monito, sí, eso lo hablamos ahoritica. Eso lo hablamos ahoritica. Que por ejemplo uno muy boca arriba, una posición, bueno, dormir boca arriba, es muy factible que a uno le pueda pasar esa vaina. De pronto de medio lado no, pero ya hemos visto casos y a mí también me ha pasado de medio lado. Porque desde que a mí me advirtieron que dormir boca arriba no es una muy buena posición para dormir, para las personas que tenemos problemas respiratorios, yo tengo mis achaques respiratorios, no es muy bueno, entonces ahí ya empecé. Pero cuando empecé ya a dormir muy de medio lado, de una u otra forma también me pasó. Claro, porque te genera una presión muy fuerte porque no sabes realmente qué es lo que está sucediendo, no entiendes por lo que estás pasando, no lo comprendes, entonces pues de ahí se genera la gran impotencia de puta, ¿qué está pasando, no? ¿Por qué no me puedo mover? ¿Por qué no puedo hacer algo al respecto? Es que se genera mucha impotencia porque realmente, mucha inseguridad en el momento, ¿no? Yo creo que también de ahí se generan este tipo de presencias de realmente no poder sentirse autónomo.
87 or 88. And I saw Nightmare on Elm Street with my mother.
Ay, amo estas películas,
on
people.
cable.
El señor Freddy Krueger con
She was
sus
like, "Oh my gosh,
tijeritas.
this is like our dream." Yeah, I know. So we definitely agreed on that. And I kept watching it because I wanted to find some clues, some answer to what was going on. And of course, they mention a little bit of myth in the movie, but not enough to really research.
Did you ever read about the Balinese whale?
Ojo, lo de Freddy Krueger. Oye, muy buena, no lo habíamos pensado, ¿no? No lo habíamos pensado, pues Freddy Krueger, los que hemos visto Freddy Krueger sí puede ser algo muy de parálisis del sueño. Puede ser, bueno, los que hemos visto las películas de Freddy Krueger, es muy basado en eso, ¿no? Lo que pasa es que obviamente acá en Hollywood lo llevan a la superpotencia, pero de pronto puede estar basado en los fundamentos de la parálisis del sueño. Porque si ustedes recuerdan Freddy Krueger, el papel del cameo de Johnny Depp, realmente es que tú estás en tus sueños y tú no te puedes, porque Freddy Krueger se apodera de tus sueños y tú no puedes hacer nada al respecto y él te lastimas en tus sueños. Freddy Krueger no te puede lastimar en la vida real, en la cotidianidad, sino que Freddy te lastimas en los sueños. Épale, esa no se me ha pasado.
They got this whole system they call dream skills. They get all their art and literature from dreams.
Un bebé de Johnny Depp.
Dream skills.
Well, what if they meet a monster in their dreams? Then what?
Puta, me regué el café. Me asustó Freddy Krueger.
When I was, we had HBO when I was little, and my dad was very liberal with letting us watch whatever we wanted to watch on HBO.
Sí, amigos, solo aparecen los sueños.
Movie, and I just kind of like wandered in, and I didn't really know what the movie was, and then this creature emerges from behind a dresser, and it's like it's an alien, and it's like it was the movie Communion with what's his face, the guy who was in the dancing video, I don't know, but Christopher Walken, yeah, exactly. Christopher Walken, and when I saw that face, my mind immediately drew a parallel to the things I had experienced as a child, and I was petrified. I remember just being petrified, and then I like stayed watching as this like little kid. And and these images I like remember as incredibly shocking images to me as a child, because it was the first time that the kind of things that I had seen aligned with something that was known about or was explored.
A bunch of people came over and they're like, "Oh, let's watch this Insidious movie," and I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Like, I don't care." And like about 20 minutes into the movie, I'm like, "Yeah, this is about sleep paralysis. I'm pretty sure." I was like, "All right, like that's kind of cool. Somebody made a horror movie about it. when the dude's like in the chair, he just goes into this like world and he's searching for the kid. They're pulling from so many different parts of sleep paralysis lore. The Shadow Man.
I kept leaving my body.
The night hag, the old hag.
I sat there and like just kind of getting annoyed. I mean, I don't even know why. Like, it wasn't like this movie sucks. I mean, it was okay. And then all of a sudden, they do like the head shaking thing, like this like weird. It was in Jacob's Ladder, and it freaked me out. Like, I was like, that's exactly how it feels. Like, and that was the first time I ever I saw somebody represent what it feels like, or I.
Esperen. Qué pena que se paralizó. Y no es parálisis del sueño, sino que es tic, puta.
It
Listo.
looks like to be in it. Like when I'm coming out, like sometimes my jaw will like just fucking go back and forth real quick, or like my head will like shoot from side to side, and it's what I imagine it looks like. Even my girlfriend, she was like,
Es una parálisis digital. Sí. Oh.
And there's a scene, and it goes by just in a flash, where that guy is like in the opening credits coming through like this strange red tunnel cloudy vortex thing. I think
Ni idea de esta peli.
producer Arnon
Pero se ve que está una locura esta película.
Like it went by in a flash, and it must have been, kind of complicated to call into existence. So I was like, why was that there? And I still didn't know what sleep paralysis was. I didn't know that anyone else had it. So I saw that and almost kind of took it as a message, like the people who made this film had the same experience that I did. And it's kind of like a signal to me in some strange, scary way.
No, it's true. I mean, it was kind of the same as a child. It was very validating.
Mecanismo de evasión.
I never thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. I just knew something bad was always happening to me. And I didn't know what to do about it.
I've prayed my whole life. I still pray. I'm a very spiritual person. However, prayer never made it go away. Even when I was within the attack, I would pray within the attack, and still, no help.
I started exercising, started eating better, cut back on caffeine and doing all that kind of stuff. And
No, la cafeína, no me quiten mi cafecito, perro.
Had absolutely no effect on the sleep paralysis, and it just kept happening like night after night after night.
Es que ya se nota que hay gente que ya está muy tocada por esa vaina, hermano.
And she says, I can't look into your house.
Porque yo creo que sí te puedes equilibrar un poquito esta vuelta. Si es tan recurrente, si a uno que le pasa una vez, 2 veces, 3 veces, uno dice, uy, gonorrea, esta huevona, ¿qué? ¿No? Yo fui a donde mi amiga que es psicóloga, pero fui a charlar con ella, se lo conté así como de panas, ¿no? Oiga, ¿usted qué me receta? Oiga, ¿usted le ha pasado esto? ¿Ha tenido alguien que tenga este tipo de vainas? Pero imagínense una persona que tenga esa huevonada recurrentemente, pues marica, hasta ya no duermen, y el no dormir ya genera psicosis y una cantidad de huevonadas, porque pues no es bueno para tu sistema. O te tienes que medicar, pero ¿qué tal que con la medicación para dormir te siga pasando, no?
Trying to look into your house, but
Eso no es vida, no es vida, no es calidad de
I see
vida.
this black shadow over it.
So I thought I was abducted by aliens for a long time. Years and years and years. Before I went to bed every night, I would lay in my bed and close my eyes and just pray, not tonight, not tonight, not tonight, not tonight, not tonight, not tonight, not tonight. And I would just repeat it over and over in my head, as if I had some kind of psychic bond.
Sí, llegaba E.T. y te agarraba.
Communicate with them telepathically.
Voy a decir algo ordinario, pero me callo.
To make tonight not the night that they would come back and do that to me.
Over the years, I would find different mechanisms to avoid sleep paralysis.
Ya se quieren poner rudos con mi tintico, monito, eso no. Como si a su merced le quitaran el mate. No sean groseros. Con eso no se metan, hermano.
And if I left it on, it was for some reason it was easier for me not to get hit by the paralysis. And you know, younger me thought it was like maybe that little high-pitched noise TVs make when you leave them on, and so I would leave it on overnight on mute for that little high-pitched noise. Eventually that stopped working after about a year.
So I decided, like, you know what? If one TV worked, what about two? And I used to like collect junk, so TV.
Este parche tampoco es bueno. Este parche yo escuché que no es bueno. Porque cuando yo fui a donde mi amiga, ella me dijo, bueno, tú estás sufriendo de fotosensibilidad por la estimulación de las pantallas, sea del celular, sea del computador o dormir con el televisor prendido. Eso no es bueno para la gente que tiene como esa sensibilidad que este tipo de vainas le pasen. No es bueno uno dormir con el televisor prendido. Y si hay gente que le gusta dormir con cositas que hagan ruido, póngase el radio. Ponga un radio cerquita y no dormir con el celular tampoco cerca. Hay que conciliar el sueño, realmente alejarse de tantas vainas que no te pueden ayudar, sino que son estímulos extra para la cabeza. Ustedes saben que el subconsciente absorbe todo, sea malo o bueno.
I'm pretty smart, apparently. No, it made me look like a crazy person until one day
I realized that
¿Será?
even if
¿Será,
this
amigo, que
was
está
a
loquillo?
problem, this was not the functional way of like dealing with it. So I removed all the TVs at that point from my room, and you know, all it did was leave me with a much stronger and more elaborate sleep paralysis. And that's kind of the thing that I've realized is if you have it every day and you have multiple episodes a day, it will kind of learn how to adapt to you. Like if you try to like avoid it, it will find you and it will.
Qué horrible, huevón. Qué horrible, marica. Se vuelve una hijueputa pesadilla, hermano. El atrapa del sueños. Ya se fueron a aliens, a fantasmas, al sombrerero. Es que es como tú lees la interpretación, ¿no? Es como tú lees la interpretación a la cuestión. Porque si se han dado cuenta hay gente que, como tú, no, que alien, que vienen los extraterrestres, que viene E.T., me baja la antena, que viene ta. Es como leer la interpretación, ¿no? Porque a ciencia cierta nadie sabe qué es. O tu cerebro que está procesando para que te dé el significado de lo que realmente es. Sin que hasta de pronto sea nada, sino sea una sugestión. Por eso es que ahorita, qué pena con ustedes, ahorita mencioné mucho lo del subconsciente, porque tu subconsciente siempre está absorbiendo información respecto a, ¿no? Siempre está recibiendo mucho estímulo. Uno no sabe qué pueda suceder y qué pueda estar absorbiendo y que en la noche pase, ¿no? O que puedan tener tus sueños y que tú quedes impactado respecto a una pesadilla, ¿verdad?
And it came here. I just closed my eyes. And it was on top of me, and it's like I was having sex with this thing.
Ay, Dios santo. Esto ya está un sóyemen, ¿no? De pronto la señorita necesitaba un... Se los voy a sacar del mood de el viernes, pero de pronto la señorita necesitaba su arrocito. La señorita estaba en su emoción del día, la señorita necesitaba placer. Y lo encontró acá con el sombrerero, pues... Ay, me hace acordar a Scary Movie, que un fantasma se tiene relaciones con... Ay, lo siento, amiga, lo siento.
What else is going to happen next? But it happened.
Did you see anything?
I didn't see anything. It was just the feeling.
¿La pasaste melo?
A lot of firsts all happened in one night. When the pain started happening,
So
the
nice.
hallucinations got more vivid, and I started to be able to be interacted with. I go directly into this very lucid dream. I remember it's the architecture of this world or this dream. Like it was just very angular, and I'm just kind of walking around. There were like stairs that went down to places that they should have thought out a little bit better.
Wow.
As I'm walking around, I remember a kid that I was friends with growing up in elementary school. My only friend from elementary school. He comes up to me, his name was Danny. And behind him is this gigantic dude with really crazy orange hair. And Danny says, "This is him. Can I go now?" And he just leaves the guy with me. And he repeats, "You know who I am." I start thinking of like, well, I don't know you. I don't. I start listing places. Do I know you from school? Do I know you from McDonald's? Because I used to work at McDonald's. Do I remember you from the Comic Book Depot, which was my comic book store? And he just keeps on going, no, but you know who I am. One last time, and then the entire world just disappears. And I'm in the strongest sleep paralysis episode I've ever had in my life. Like, I cannot move. Like, I can't even try to force myself out of it. Like, that little wiggle room I get sometimes just wasn't there. And it felt like I was completely
Sí, monito.
constrained.
Sí, es...
Yeah, fully. I'm just trying to breathe.
Hay una gran posibilidad de que eso suceda. No al 100% de que te mueras, pero es que tu cuerpo puede llegar a unos niveles de inconsciencia supremos. Donde ahí realmente, pues... Eso es lo que hablamos ahorita, cuando uno está soñando que se va a caer, es cuando el cuerpo te avisa que algo no está bien.
The worst one is when it's around like, fucking dick.
No, pero esto ahora sí se está convirtiendo en una hijo de puta película de terror. Pero que esta mierda tan ordinaria. Puede ser también, monito, claramente. Claramente, sí, señor.
I did not go back to sleep that night. I remember, and I think I just played video games until the morning and kind of questioned my existence. Like, I just remember being like, and this is different now, and now it hurts, and now there's a dude talking to me.
Yo no he soñado que nadie me destroza el petete, pero a mí sí me ha pasado que cuando después de jugar por muchas horas, sea el juego que sea, pero bueno, juegos que tengan mucho estímulo visual, muy cargados, puede ser un shooter como en este caso, si uno termina soñando barbaridades, pero ya por muchas horas. Pero es que yo creo que eso también es una gran situación respecto al inconsciente.
And that was kind of when I started to feel a little crazy. Like, I started to feel like something was definitely wrong. Was it me? Maybe. Was it something supernatural? Maybe. I immediately stopped being an atheist.
And sometimes they're very articulate, like that one was when I was like a little boy. And they'll be like, "Oh, I can talk to you, and I know your name, and this and that." And sometimes they're just like gobbledygooking, just blah, 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 like they don't have the capability to speak anymore. When I was older and I went back to the house and was staying there, I mean, I hated going back to that house. I had other bad experiences there, and so I hated going back there. I hated sleeping there. I would usually, if I go back there and visit, I leave the TV on, because it's just such an overwhelming force. So I fell asleep and I had this nightmare. And then I woke up into sleep paralysis. And I was like, but I was so put off by the dream that I wasn't immediately shocked by the state of sleep paralysis, which normally is what it does. And I could kind of see out of the corner of my eyes that there was this man standing down at the end of my bed, kind of like a schlumpy, like old man.
Looks too young for some reason. Maybe it's his posture.
And I'm like, just kind of like, oh, that's weird. So I'm laying there, and there's this man down at the end of the bed, and he says to me, he says, Forrest, you just came all over your mother's sheets.
What the fuck?
All over your mother's bed sheets. You're disgusting. A pervert.
And I had not masturbated that night, I will say, but his voice was immediately familiar as the voice that had talked to me when I was a child. The same voice. It was like as if, you know, you get a phone call from a relative or somebody you haven't talked to in a while, run into an old friend and hear their voice first, and you recognize the voice. You haven't heard it in a long time, but you know it. It's that person. And when I had that experience, I'm like, oh, it's that voice, that man.
I've seen him like 2 or 3 more times in that physical incarnation, but I've also had like times where I've seen people that have approached me the same way, and I felt like, yes, that's him. Like it was a different body, but it was that same entity that was speaking to me.
We had a friend staying over. Like we had like people over that night, and we had like a 1-bedroom tiny apartment. So like we were all like kind of crammed into my bed. And I remember I had gone to sleep.
You know, the 2 girls, they were asleep. You know, they were out like a light. Almost immediately the paralysis hits. Normal paralysis. Completely.
Esas personas necesitan medicamento.
Dark room. But in this, there's a really tall
Sí, eso me pasa a mí con el Counter Strike.
If the room is 8 feet tall, he's an 8-foot tall dude with a hunch. Like, he's not fitting in the room.
Qué pena, voy a hacer un paréntesis. Es que me hizo reír mucho tu comentario, lo siento. Mi Fer, esas personas necesitan medicamento. Pana, sí. Yo sí creo, man. Yo sí creo porque tienen unos oyes. Tienen unos oyes heavies, ¿no? Uno llega hasta el punto de que, uy, no, pues que esta gente ya tuvieron relaciones con los tales, les agarraron el tales y se lo destruyeron, y esto ya es otro nivel. Yo les dije que esta gente ya es otro nivel. Es un nivel ya super saiyajin. ¿Eso te pasa con el Counter-Strike? Ok, bonito. Entonces, a ver, Counter-Strike, un juego mitiquísimo. Ajá, yo sí creo. ¿Apoyas lo que dice Fer?
And like very Mothman type shit, actually.
Parece una gárgola.
He repeats, you know who I am.
You don't know who I am
right now, but I know you and you know me.
Uy, no, pero no hablen así de feo tampoco, hijo de putas.
I just had this horrible experience, you know, and, you know, I believed it. I believed that this thing was telling me it was going to kill me. I'm going to die. And I'm sitting here feeling bad for her, that she's freaking out, and I'm trying to calm her down. I figured she had a sleep terror or something like that. And she's telling me that on her chest, she saw something on her chest, like a cat with red eyes, and it was looking at me, talking in a
Oh,
language
qué horrible, eso sí está horrible, man.
like it was on top of her, but threatening me.
Qué pena, otro paréntesis. Usted sí, bueno, no sé de pronto, pero acá en Colombia uno escucha mucho historias con gente que es de pueblo, historias de brujas, ¿no? Que si uno se duerme así con los brazos así, viene una bruja y se te siente, es cuando comienzas a sentir una presión fuerte en el pecho. Y en los pueblos se escucha mucho eso, ¿no? De que vienen brujas y no te duermas de tal forma, hasta también que se pongan los calzones al revés. Eso es mucho del pueblo, pero pues entonces si no es ese tipo de historias con respecto a brujas, sino es ese tipo de situaciones y es la parálisis del sueño, es que todo se le puede llevar a un significado un poco más aterrizado, ¿no? Es lo que creo, ¿no? Es una forma de pensar con todo lo que están hablando acá. Y de mucha leyenda urbana que también hemos escuchado. Que no pueden ser, a veces no son leyendas urbanas tan articuladas y tan gigantes, sino que son leyendas urbanas que esas a veces son las que más asustan, ¿no?
It's fine. And then this happened, and then it immediately affirmed I thought I was going to be dead. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to die.
And like shit like that immediately makes me want to be like, fuck like regular life. Like, sorry about the language. When things like that happen,
Sí, no sea
it's
grosero,
very
hermano.
hard for me to be like,
Eso déjanoslo a nosotros.
yeah, I'm just gonna go get a normal job and like live my life. Like, I'm like, I want to figure this out.
Any idea why it happens to you more than other people?
I have no idea. I mean, I guess, you know, it's all just presumption, but, you know, could assume that maybe it had something to do with being such a young child, you know, and having such a profound experience. You know, it's kind of like when you see something for the first time, you know what it is. You know, you go to SeaWorld and you see a killer whale and you've never seen it before. You know, now you know what a killer whale is.
I read the very few websites out there about it, and I didn't really learn anything new except for there is a chemical, melatonin, that goes into your system and is released upon sleep that is supposed to paralyze you. And I was like,
Okay.
maybe this could be medical. But again, there was never an explanation for the shadow man except for hypnagogic hallucinations, which is a nice word that the doctors like to throw around, but it really means you just imagined it.
My guess is we conceptualize things in our unconscious based on like snippets of information that we picked up along the road somehow. If I came from an evangelical community where they really believed in evil demons, maybe my immediate association from my unconscious as I'm like rising out of sleep would have been like, oh shit, it's the devil.
Yeah, that's interesting. Although I wonder if you look at your own reaction to your experience is similar in a way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like, that's true. And like, of course, like also my unconscious is like, what is the scientific explanation for this? There must be a reason that has to do with logic. So yeah, of course I like leapt for that too. I can see it just as easily as like there's the commonality of like human experience and like how our brains and our hearts and like our personalities function. Like we're all people. Why wouldn't we see similar things? Like we're not different species. Why wouldn't we have similar go-to archetypes in our brain? So Jungian.
But it can't entirely be born from you. You know, that's to say that everybody has in them the capability of bringing out these horrible things before they've even witnessed anything horrible.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
It's one of my theories that we're actually running our brain. We're kind of over.
Este es el más odiado de todos.
More than we would when we're just sleeping or just awake. And that kind of heightened sense of perception, while we as humans can't really, we can't interpret it. Like, we're still not, you know, interpreting it right. But now we're seeing the raw data. We're seeing, you know, oh, that could be a demon. I don't know how to visualize a demon because that's not a thing that my brain can interpret.
Identificar, sí.
And I mean, I actually kind of believe that probably a lot of people
Por ahí puede ir, por ahí.
have been abducted were actually victims of sleep paralysis of varying degrees. And of course, as reading more about sleep paralysis and realizing the prevalence of this experience, you know, exists in every single culture in the world.
Ese
There are
señor
these
que...
common archetypes that keep popping up, and all over the world. Like, it's not just in America people get these red-eyed demons, and it's not...
Es que es lo que les estaba diciendo con respecto a las historias de los pueblos que supuestamente de pronto cuando se muere, lo que les estaba diciendo hasta de los familiares, que se muere un familiar y la persona siente que el familiar está cerca, entonces de eso lo vuelven una cuestión súper espiritual, gigantesca, ¿no?
The cat's on the chest.
Que se te sientan en el pecho. Eso sí lo hemos escuchado todos, ¿no?
A giant cat that would come into somebody's like house while they were sleeping and hold them down. This like clawed, like teeth and claws, sometimes metal or like metal-ish.
Como les digo, acá en los pueblos se cree mucho que la bruja se te sienta en el pecho y no puedes hacer nada y te genera una impotencia grandísima. Pero no te hace nada. Bueno, creo que aparecen con rasguños y la gente y demás.
Among immigrants, but then subsequently a lot of them died, you know, from sleep paralysis.
Right. I know Wes Craven read an article about them, and that helped inspire on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger, which, you know, then went on to create a weird feedback loop, inspiring other people's nightmares and sleep paralysis experiences.
So I had a dream about Freddy Krueger, and he obviously wanted to kill me, wanted to harm me, wanted to scare the crap out of me. And I believe that fear creates a substance, and I got this black ink scared out of me, like an ink fish. And I believe that's what it eats.
The physicist Michio Kaku said that maybe that we don't live in just one dimension, that we live in multiple dimensions. And if you imagine a block of flats that is an infinite extension of itself, so it keeps adding to itself all the time and never stops. And in every room of this block of flats is an entire universe like ours. Now, in every other room, there must be another universe. So, if that's true, maybe some other us have found our way into the hallway and are knocking on our door.
Puede ser, sería muy loco. Sería muy loco si eso fuese real. No, loco no, sería increíble.
Right after my mom died, I was very depressed, and so I would be crying. You know, there was this
Usted fue la que
one day
tuvo
I remember
relaciones con
that I had a
el sombrerero.
breakdown, and I was crying a lot.
Qué pena, qué pena, qué pena.
And then the next day, since I worked night shift, I came home, slept, to sleep. And that for some reason that day I wanted to sleep on my side, so I slept on my side facing the door of the bedroom. And all of a sudden I felt my body getting numb. I felt it getting paralyzed. And I said, oh my God, I'm getting this again. But then it felt different. I heard somebody walking. This presence came around and it came behind me. I was like this. It came behind me and it hugged me.
Esto es lo que les decía. Sentir al familiar cerca. A mí nunca me ha pasado eso, pero sí he escuchado a mucha gente que le ha pasado eso.
And I felt it was my mother.
Oh.
I heard her voice and she says, honey, I'm here. I'm here. And it felt so different from night saying, I'm here, I'm here. And that was just a matter of seconds. All of a sudden she was gone. So I really, I think it's my mom that comes to visit us.
Eso sí no lo debato, ¿no? Son cosas muy...
It happened like 2 or 3 times because even though I feel it's her, there's a part of me that sometimes says, what if it's this thing? Because sometimes when I have felt her, all of a sudden then it kind of switches. And then I do feel like if there's another presence. And then I don't know if it's this thing again that used to haunt me back then, or if it...
Otra vez sí. Un segundo, people, discúlpenme. Listo.
The one that stands out above all others happened one night when me and my girlfriend went to bed, and it was around 10 o'clock and I went really tired. So I played on my phone for a bit and had a game on the phone, and I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, I stood outside of my bed in a very oppressive atmosphere. I can't describe the atmosphere to you unless you were there. I mean, I've never experienced it before, and I've never experienced it again like that. It's a kind of a very staticky, just presence of evil. And as I turn to my left, I see my girlfriend in bed, and I see me in bed. And now I'm confused, but I also see my eyes open. And then I heard myself laboured breathing, which is what I do when I have a sleep paralysis attack. I'm shocked, scared, and I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm confused more than anything. I can't think straight. I don't know what's going on. And almost instantly, as I'm thinking that, I can see three beings over in this corner of the room. There's no looking me up and down and seeing who I am and what I'm doing there. The two generic shadow people advance on me straight away. A grapple ensued between me and them. I like to say it was a noble fight that I had to really put my foot down and win, but it wasn't. They just retreated straight away then when I put resistance up behind the Hat Man. And the Hat Man shielded them, and I had no intention of going forward to investigate anymore. All I know is that I have to get back in bed. That's some voice in my head saying, and my own voice saying, get back in bed. And as I turned, I can see a long silver thread, for want of a better word, that's going up towards my body. And I decide that now I've got to get back into bed. And just as I decide that, I shoot up in bed. There's no in between going back in my body or whatever. It's just I'm there. I sit straight up, and I go downstairs into the kitchen, get a drink, and I'm instantly hit by the fear and guilt that I've left her on their own upstairs. Because they're still in that room. I know they're still in that room. And as I go back upstairs, I sit in bed and I stay up all night. And it's like I'm on watch.
¿Ustedes se acuerdan que yo en algún momento les comenté, bueno, y que escuchamos también unas historias relacionadas a un programa de radio Insomnia, que escuchamos en algún momento lo que había pasado, que lo escuchamos en el primer programa que hicimos respecto a esto? En ese programa de radio donde se habla de este tipo de vainas paranormales o de cuestiones de este tipo, mientras él estaba hablando respecto a la situación de que estaba fuera de su cuerpo, en algún momento también en esta emisora llamó a alguien hablando como con mucha sutileza respecto a que no sabía si eran fantasmas o si era cuestiones espiritistas o si era realmente que el man no le podía dar significado, pero esperaba que la gente de la radio le diera el significado a la situación por la que él estaba pasando. Porque recuerdo que era un señor un señor como de edad. Le decía, bueno, lo que pasa es que yo un día durmiendo por situaciones como que me salí de mi cuerpo y yo podía mirarme y pasó así eso muchas veces y yo no sabía qué hacer con la situación, que yo cómo podía hacer ese tipo de vainas, ¿será que es que yo me iba a morir? Se notaba que era como una persona muy creyente. Entonces, ¿será que mi Dios me quería ya llevar me quería llevar con él o le da un poquito de significado a ese tipo de vainas? Y el Señor, pues también yo creo que su ingenuidad, pues porque pues, no sé ya hasta qué punto. Él decía es que los hermanos le decían que por favor nunca se durmiera con la puerta del armario abierta, porque esa era una posibilidad para que el alma se fuese por el me pareció chistoso, que el alma se fuese por el armario. Entonces, si se cerrase el armario, él no, el alma no podía retornar al cuerpo. Son historias coloquiales, obviamente la gente le digo, en la emisora, digo, pues creemos que usted está sufriendo de parálisis del sueño. Pero el Señor quería darle más el significado, ¿no? El Señor que llamó quería darle más el significado y la gente de Insomnia le decía, no, seguramente lo que usted está sufriendo es de parálisis del sueño, Señor. Eso, pero no, es que yo creo que es que mi Dios y es que mis hermanos también me han dicho unas cosas y les estoy diciendo que ya era un viejo. Pero pues bueno, era bonito, era entretenido escuchar al Señor que le daba aún más significado y la gente de la radio le decía, no, espere. Usted está llamando para que nosotros lo ayudemos o lo guiemos y le digamos que por lo que usted está pasando. Y el Señor que no, vea marica.
they just wanted me really bad. I remember I was just sort of laying in my bed, and then there's now a loud noise, and I hate the sound of the noise. It's like almost like spirits or demons like kind of like screaming at you.
Uy,
So then
no,
you
pero
hear
qué
like it's
ordinaria esa
almost like a
gritería.
buzzing that starts, and then I can sense a presence right, like standing over me, just standing right here next to me on my bed, standing over me. Then you hear like this sound. It's like, it feels like somebody's screaming right in your ear. Like they're right here and they're screaming.
Hueputa. Se lo tengo re duro el documental este mal parido. No más screams.
And I can sense the color red, as if they were wearing something red, like a dark red robe of some kind, or something red. And I tried to look at the face, but I couldn't. Like every inch, every centimeter feels like a ton. And so I'm trying to move, and I want to see it, and I'm like straining to look up. I could barely move my head. It was almost like going like this, like. And then I think I said something. I just said, I remember this guy. His name is Jesus, and I'm gonna use his name right now, and I'm gonna say just in Jesus' name, you get out, or I said something to that effect.
Y tome agua bendita, échele agua bendita a ese cuarto y a usted misma échese agua bendita, marica, porque...
Jesus' name.
Ay, es horrible porque uno así trata de hablar y no sabe... Mamá, auxilio, socorro, me oriné. Es horrible, huevón.
And I suddenly sensed that the demons.
Yo también estuvo feo, Cami, estuvo feo ahí esa huevona.
Just left, gone.
Entonces Scream.
And it was amazing. It was like a feeling of victory. Yeah.
When they never came back?
They never came back. I wasn't even a Christian then.
Okay.
I actually abhorred religion. I didn't want.
Lo que estamos hablando al comienzo de la religión, ¿no?
Marry a Christian man, and I just laughed.
Pero eso va en
Anyways,
cada uno, ¿no? Eso es muy
I
individual.
learned very
Y es
late
muy
in life
respetable.
that the name of Jesus has power, and that's how I became a Christian.
So, do you not
¿No más?
do you not believe in the Wikipedia definition of sleep paralysis?
No, that would be sort of like I guess the worldly term, like what people would deem as something that's a physiological.
Respetable, ¿no? Es respetable, pues.
Response, that it's like a natural thing that happens with the body, but I don't think that's true.
Respetable, amiga.
I do think that it's something to do with the spiritual realm, and it's closely tied with possibly demonic activity.
At 33 years old, I don't think it's going to get any better for me. I've experienced it most of my life, if not all of my life. I know what it's like. I don't believe that this is just a rare occurrence. I think none of us are special that have this happen to them. There's no reason why we should have this happen to us. So, but I'd like to know how many other people out there experience this. I know there are quite a few, but I think there's a lot more.
Hey everybody, it's Connie here, aka a Phoenix Rising 11. Thank you for joining me. I first want to start out by saying that I'm about to tell you a very personal story, and if you get weirded out easily or you're not that open-minded.
So you made a pretty powerful YouTube video about your experience. Do you watch a lot of other people's sleep paralysis videos?
I don't really like to listen. I haven't seen a lot of other people's sleep paralysis videos. Although people do send me their stuff, I just am not in a place to want to listen to that kind of stuff anymore. I don't know why. I feel like it's like kind of like that's the past. And I'm not in that space anymore. That I found faith, and I met my husband, and I never thought I'd get married, and
So you're actually trying not to think too much about sleep paralysis anymore,
Yeah.
despite.
yeah, I mean, why?
Yeah.
For what?
Destinos finales, coño de su madre. Yo le tengo un pequeño significado a esta parte que el documental nos muestra como si fuese un shooting o si fuese el lugar de producción, ¿no? Más adelante, pues me imagino que ustedes también tendrán el por qué lo muestran así.
I was dating a girl. It was pretty crazy. She was kind of like really into being very naturey, not like a hippie, but kind of like a crazy wood spirit nymph thing. It was kind of her vibe. All her clothes were like stitched together. Like she was crazy. She would do things like say, and it was getting dark and it was kind of dusk. So she said, let's build a stone circle, because we had just gone to a pebble beach. So we took our pebbles and we laid them all down. And then we decided to be receptive, what that means.
En serio, men. Que ya... Ay, hermano, por favor, el documental está bueno, ponte serio.
And I was just kind of standing there like this. And she goes like this. And suddenly she goes, oh, something's coming. And she had her eyes closed. And,
La chica tenía sus oye, ¿no?
Un
poquito. En serio, papi. Hoy sí me estás dando guerra, nene. Listo. No sé, hoy el OBS ha estado molestando un poquito.
Blue form started approaching like this wavery blue thing. Like the same quality of those black things that you talked about, but blue, peaceful, just really like nice. And she's like, oh, she's blue. She said she's blue. Eyes closed, like this. And it came and approached, and then it just kind of stood still. And it was like maybe like 6 feet, like over there. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about this. And here's my girlfriend, and she's just like laughing a lot, like, oh, she's saying such the funniest things. Like, it's crazy. It was really crazy and weird. And she goes, oh, she says not to be worried about the demons behind you.
¿Cómo?
And I was like,
what the fuck?
Turned around, and I saw them.
Zonas.
That same face. The face that people see when they're abducted by aliens. The face that I saw as a small child.
Se le volvió realidad la pesadilla.
And then in that moment, I suddenly had this like kind of realization. Because it wasn't like linguistic. I didn't hear anybody talking to me, but I like felt a thought in my head, something external, and it was all about how fear empowers bad things. To have fear when you're in a bad environment or a bad place or around a bad thing only gives that thing more strength. What that kind of made me sort of begin to realize is that, here I'm hearing these voices, and they're disembodied, confused, schizophrenic ghosts, yeah, those are people. Maybe they're dead, maybe they're alive, maybe they're not, I don't know. But then the other things, the black cloudy thing, these gray things, those are something more primal, something more just environmental. And when I kind of came to that realization, I'm like, well, why does it have to be any one thing? And shortly thereafter, the blue spirit dissipated into the woods, and then we went back to, the cabin, and that was that.
You're talking about something that happens at the absolute edges of like dreaming. Like you can't explain dreams, you can't explain them logically. They're all like little bits and pieces that come up from your unconsciousness and from like things that you've experienced, and who knows how like the sleeping mind puts things together. And now you're talking about an experience that happens like in that in-between stage. It's so liminal. You can't put logic onto liminal situations.
I need you to also understand that I was in an abusive household.
I believe because I was beaten so much during the day
Fue puta.
that at night my soul had to heal to keep me here. That's why I had to get through the fourth dimension. And that's why I had to go somewhere else to be healed so that I could come back and deal with my life.
I knew absolutely nothing about sleep paralysis until I was told about it. And then I like almost instantly began experiencing it. I don't believe like the medical explanation to it, the physiological stuff. It's just a sleep disorder. There's got to be way more to it. Like I told my one friend about it one night, just talking. I was like, "Have you ever heard of sleep paralysis?" She's like, "No." And so I kind of shared my experience. And then like the next day, she's texted me. She's like, "I hate you. I hate you. Whatever you were telling me about happening to you, now it's starting to happen to me." Kind of like an STD, sleep transmitted disease.
There was an experience during this time that I actually did think I died. The whole dream's going fine. I don't really know what we're doing. It lasts a long time. It's like one of those, 3-4 day feeling type dreams. So I'm just kind of existing in it and sort of enjoying it. And all of a sudden, like, somebody knocks at the door. It's like 2 homeless dudes. And they're trying to get in, and I'm trying to tell them, like, listen, we're at capacity. We're at capacity for homeless people in my weird dream town. There's a guy on rollerblades in the background. Very nice. And as I'm thinking about it, he turns and he starts rollerblading towards me. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, he's gonna come into play here. This is cool. Like, I'm probably gonna wake up soon because it's all evaporating. And as he gets really close, he just pulls out a gun. And then I'm in the paralysis. But it's not a paralysis I've ever felt before. It's just nothing. I don't see anything. I don't feel anything.
Es que las parálisis de este amigo son una locura, huevón. Son una jodida locura.
And I was like, nah, probably not. Maybe I'm in a coma. And I started to think, like, sleep paralysis probably finally fucked me. Like, I'm probably done. And I probably just stopped breathing, and this is what happens when it happens. Like, I'm just nothingness. And, like, 5-10 minutes go by, and I'm just, like, getting a little nervous, but, like, at the same time, I'm just kind of weirdly serene. Like, this sucks. And I remember thinking, like, I'm gonna try to pull out of it. Like, the same motion I would do to pull out of sleep paralysis, I'm gonna just try to emulate that. And I try over and over and over again. I mean, hundreds of times. Just like, but I'm getting somewhere. And I remember I come up for like half a second. And I can see my room. It's like I can open my eyes a little bit, but there's nothing there anymore. And it's almost like I'm just in bed and the room is like, all the details of the room are gone. Where there's, I could see my now ex-girlfriend's dresser or little vanity, and there's nothing on it. And I remember I called out her name and nobody came, and then I was back in the paralysis. And then it was another, 5-10 minutes of pulling out, and then eventually I woke up. And she wasn't there, nobody was around, but it was the worst. I just felt like I died. It became this kind of turning point for me, and how I saw all this, and I definitely didn't want that to happen ever again.
So how did that change the way you saw all this?
Whereas before I felt like I was maybe, learning and exploring, and it was like kind of fun. It stopped being fun. Like it's not like I get to, like people talk about astral projection and all these like fucking awesome sounding things, like how they get to fly around and I don't know, do cool things. And I don't get that. I don't get, those. I just get these weird experiences where I feel like for a second I can see something that most people can't. Like there's what we see in the world, and right behind it, almost like it's like everything's cellophane wrapped or something. And for half a second that like wrapper's gone, and I could see or perceive something a little bit more real, or whatever real is, and then it's gone. But I can see it for that half a second. And so like no matter what fear or pain comes along with it, I always get this experience where even if it's in my head, it's made something interesting. It's something that I can pull from that makes my life almost kind of worth it, which is, for a long time something I don't feel like I've ever had. And it's gonna probably just keep getting worse. And I truly believe that one day it will be the reason why, like, one day I don't wake up. And one day I'm just...
Muy fatalista la situación, ¿no?
I don't breathe, I can't control the breathing, and it's done. And I feel terrible.
Oh, ya lo vamos a terminar.
When that happens,
Ya lo vamos a terminar.
but
Lo
I'm kind
vimos
of
todo.
ready for that. Hey, Chris. I'm ready for that to be, just kind of what happens to me. But I would like to figure out a lot more about this before that happens. And it's also made me feel very comfortable with the idea. Like, if something's happening that's more than I'm just crazy, then something's happening.
A ver, bueno, ya lo terminamos. Conclusiones respecto a lo que acabamos de ver. Consideraría yo en lo que veíamos con respecto a que era una sala de producción donde había cámaras, donde se veían las sombras como tal. Era una zona de control. La zona de control, ¿qué es? Nuestro cerebro. Entonces yo lo estaba mirando de esa forma y yo decía, bueno, esta es la parte de nuestra cabeza que está controlando la situación desde distintos puntos, con distintas motivaciones, con distintas formas de ver las cosas. Lo estaba viendo de esa forma, ¿no? Y creo que de esa forma se tiene que llevar a cabo, se tiene que pensar la cuestión de la parálisis del sueño. La parálisis del sueño considero yo que es una situación respecto a mucha inconsciencia y mucho estímulo visual. Estrés también se puede llevar al estrés. También se le puede dar ese significado de la situación realmente cuando uno está bajo mucho estrés. Y es que realmente cuando estamos en eso nos llevamos a un punto de la inconsciencia de no poder hablar, de no poder reaccionar, de no poder ni siquiera sonarnos, no poder hacer absolutamente nada. Entonces lo llevaría hasta ese punto, ¿no? Todo está en nuestra cabeza. Es mi forma de verlo, ¿no? Cada cual lo puede ver desde distinto punto, pero mi forma de verlo es así, ¿no? Sí me ha pasado varias veces, pero es cuando estoy en una situación o cuando he estado mucho tiempo al frente del computador, cuando tengo el televisor prendido, cuando realmente no tuve un muy buen día y estoy bajo mucho estrés y pasas en ese tipo de situaciones y yo creo que es que el cerebro llega a un punto que se choca y se raya y lleva como, uy, fue puta, ¿no? Algo pasa. Por eso es que fue importante también tocarles el punto que cuando tú tienes ese sueño de que te sobresaltas porque el cuerpo te está avisando que algo mal puede llegar a pasar, el cuerpo también te puede dar ese tipo de avisos y ese tipo de estímulos, ¿no? De pronto algo que le falta un poquito al documental, que el documental creo que es bueno, pero es que también romantiza mucho. Pero sería también de que abordaran un poquito más la parte científica respecto a la situación de la parálisis del sueño. Sería muy bueno que un científico, un neurólogo, hiciese una investigación respecto a alguien que realmente está pasando eso y que se le haga un examen y un estudio como la gente que sufre de apnea del sueño, ¿no? Y a ver cómo es ese manejo ese cerebral, cómo se comportan esas situaciones. Sería de puta madre y creo que sería muy bueno pues para las personas que, no como uno, que pues uno ha tenido eso ocasionalmente, pero para personas que sí han tenido esa situación como tan latente, sí sería muy bueno que se pudiese hacer un estudio más tocho, ¿no? Y más, con más nivel investigativo.